Not too long ago, Guild Wars 2 had an interesting thing happen to their game. A bug caused a high-level, ubiquitous end-of-game important crafting item to stop dropping from salvaged items. Those who play Guild Wars 2 know what I'm talking about. Happens to be globs of ectoplasm, otherwise known as ectos. The bug didn't last very long, but it had some profound effects on the community and economy. So, let's take a little bit of talk about this bug and how it affected everyone. See you on the other side. Good morning, YouTube, and welcome to another MMO Anthropology. I, of course, am your host, Amarist, and we're in Guild Wars 2 in the lovely South Sun Cove. Let's see if we can't get a good look at... I like the ships. I figured I'd stand on all this derelict fallen ship here and do it in the middle of the night because I love the fire. I love watching these little fireflies. In fact, I hope that you do too. And I'm greatly amused that we're looking at a game that actually reflects a day-night cycle. It takes about 2 hours. There's 40 minutes of night, 80 minutes of day. So we're here to talk about the Ecto Bug. Here, let me show you what a glob of ectoplasm is by popping into the Black Lion Trading Company, which is essentially an auction house. Ectoplasm. Oh, if I can spell it right. Essentially, while I have this up here, let me describe the bug. Essentially, the primary place where you get ectos is from melting down rare and exotic equipment with salvage kits, which come in various qualities from, well, crude to awesome. Namely, the awesome ones are called the Black Lion salvage kits, which you'll notice is the same as the Black Lion Trading Company. That's basically Guild Wars 2's internal corporation, kind of like Manco from Team Fortress 2. Generally, when you melt one of these items down, it pops out 0 to 3 ectos, for an average of about 0.9 ecto per rare item. The bug, when it occurred, however, caused this drop rate to diminish to almost half that, like vanishingly small. So when it was introduced, two huge noticeable things happened. And primarily it came because the community began to notice that the ectos weren't dropping as often, that they had been halved. So first, people started to wonder why they weren't seeing as many ectos drop every time that they were melting down these items, which they were getting from various events in the game. Mostly chest events, mostly dragons, etc., which I've spoken about in another video. Let me make that vanish. Get a good look at this stuff. And secondly, the economy started to suffer. In fact, the price of ectos, which I was just previously showing in the auction house, started to precipitously rise over the days that the drop rate fell. And of course, this could be said because the desire for people to get ectos, which are used in a lot of high-level crafting, remained the same, but the population of ectos going into the auction house was falling. And, of course, because people noticed, one, they were getting less ectos, the price of ectos in the auction house was going up. This caused people to start exploring why. They started running their own tests. They would gather up 60 or 100 rare items, melt them all down, and then post the results on the forums, and other people would post the same, and then they would compare them to previous times that ectos were dropping, and actually noticed that the drop rate had fallen, that it wasn't some strange or potentially even weird superstition about the drop rate, that it had actually statistically changed. So I went online and I looked at some of the history of this, and according to the blog on minmaxer.com written by Max Wolf, I quote, "On May 28th, a player noted that the official Guild Wars 2 forum said that out of 166 salvages, he only received about 80 ecto, or about 0.5 ecto per salvage. This is approximately half the original rate of 0.9 ecto per salvage. Since the rate of new ecto entering the market was halved, no change on demand, the auction house price on ectos began to steadily rise." As we kind of expect, from basic economics, supply and demand. When you have lessening supply but the same demand, the price is probably going to go up. And Other players had experienced the same, of course, and began to build a community sensation about something happening to ecto drops. Some cited the rise in cost on the auction house, which wasn't a killer increase because by the 30th, the ectos had gone from around 18 silver to 24 silver, and what we just saw, it's back down to 18 again. And that's an increase of about 33%. However, this wasn't quite enough for the community, even though people began to pitch in on the forums. Players continue to post, and the thread began quoting even larger sample sizes, such as salvaging 500 rares, resulting in 256 ectos, salvaging 775 rares, resulting in 402 ectos. With these sample sizes, the probability that it was a true salvage rate is unchanged from 9.0 was essentially 0, i.e., the players went to the forums, they went through their own experiments and discovered that the drop rate had actually changed, and the developers, ArenaNet, had said nothing about this. This is a very big deal and a fundamental bug in the game. And so, as the rising tide of concern built up, ArenaNet's on-staff economist appeared in the forums, and I've spoken about what John Smith has done in the past while I spoke about his lovely infographics, and noted that the staff was looking into the problem. Of course, probably a good thing on a customer service level for ArenaNet, not pissing off your constituents, your players in your world by suddenly causing their stuff to be much more difficult to build. The problem was finally patched on May 30th. That's 2 days after the discovery of the bug. And ArenaNet acknowledged that the bug had occurred, and the patch was really swiftly deployed. After they said, "Oh no, we see the bug." At the end, John left a final message. "Thanks to everyone for your help identifying the issue and providing great data to start our research." Now, after that, the volume of ectos was quickly on its way to recovering, but the price has, as you've seen, certainly fallen back to very close to where it was historically, and it's sat there since the fix, as you can see at the graph that I showed you earlier. I mentioned before that MMO games aren't just a sterile, worlds where people hang out and interact with NPCs and etc. And they're not just built and left behind. They're a constantly growing community, and the cultures that form in them are actually directly affected by the game, the way the mechanics work, and even in-game bugs, which is why I like to bring up bugs and how the community reacted. The effect of bugs on the culture and the community can show a lot about how the community itself interacts with the game, but also, interestingly, the community and culture in the game isn't the only thing going on. The developers are also a really big part of this. And I'd say that there's an ongoing construction of community and how it interacts with the world. And for the most part, many players go about their day not thinking about the mechanics or the developers, except perhaps in a superstitious sense of attempting to guide the random number generator or curse the developers when something doesn't go their way. I know I've done that before. People are constantly complaining about ArenaNet, what they've done, what they might do, what they're going to do. It's this way in every MMO. The developers are kind of like these sort of gods who you take in vain, and you use their name in order to divine oaths and retribution. But, of course, when an actual change comes down that wasn't part of the expectations of the community, things can go a little off-kilter. The developers may control the world and its underlying mechanics, even the day-night cycle or the number of enemies that appear, like this Kakra over here. But they're not wholly separate from the context of the culture, like of the gamers themselves, and how ArenaNet approached the bug and the community's reaction to it speaks to how well integrated they are with the needs and quote-unquote fun of the culture and the community that they're trying to generate in the game. Now, in large parts, because ArenaNet are essentially a provider. They develop the game, they keep the mechanics running, they also do operations and etc., and they publish the game, but they also have to interact with a large group of people who are running around having fun in this game. Events and etc. We can see people running around, exploding and shooting people in the distance right here. That's why I chose this perch to have this discussion. So, one of the reasons why I bring this up is because we've looked at things like the SWTOR bug or protests in games, where players will do some sort of huge event that either crashes servers or attempts to get the attention of the developers of games who don't generally interact with the community at all, and that changes the focus of the way that the players themselves approach the game as either hardcore, casual, or in order to have fun, and the way that they see the developers who aren't, these things who are separate or godlike, that are unchanging or unapproachable. So we've seen a split in communities where there's these sort of individuals who attempt to petition them like they were a government or a part of the community, and then you see the other side who are extremely superstitious about them, who don't really do this, who instead develop interesting ways of approaching the random number generator, like the way that the World of Warcraft community came up with interesting memes trying to figure out why Onyxia, one of the big one of the big raid bosses, would do a particular attack that could wipe entire raids when it was really largely random. But when the random number generator itself, or at least the statistics, is affected, that's something that the developers have done, and as we've seen, it can affect the community, the economy, and even the way that the players view the very game that they're playing. So, that's all for today. Thanks for coming along. I hope that you didn't lose too much with the great Ecto Bug of May 2013. Meanwhile, thanks for watching. This has been another MMO Anthropology. I've been your host, Amarist. Good night, and good dreams. I really do like how the nighttime and these little firefly dots change the way that South Sun Cove looks. It's quite interesting. The artwork in this game has always been beautiful, but so the idea of economics and the economy of games comes up a lot because it's one of the facets of MMO games that's immediately quantifiably ready for us to approach. As I have said, I've looked at it in Star Trek Online, I've looked at it in Guild Wars in an earlier video, and you should go check those out if you're interested. But meanwhile, thank you for coming along. If you've liked what you watched and you're more interested in more discussions on communities and MMO games and how they change, how they perceive themselves, or even how players play the games themselves, because I do interviews with players, please hit that like button, leave a comment if you have something to say about the Ecto Bug of 2013. Meanwhile, remember to comment, subscribe, hit that like button, or your Ectos will lose all their value.